I want you to picture a scenario that I think every single person listening has had nightmares about. It's Friday afternoon, you've had a long week, you're staring at a spreadsheet, maybe an email draft, and your brain is just done.
Totally fried. Ready to check out.
You're ready for the weekend.
Yeah.
You have one last task. Process a few invoices, maybe send a company update. You type in the numbers, you hit enter, and you lean back in your chair.
And then that feeling.
And then about 3 seconds later, your stomach just drops through the floor.
The cold sweat. The realization that you didn't just make a typo, you made a catastrophe.
Exactly. We've all been there on, a small scale. Maybe you sent a reply all that was meant for just one person.
Oh, the worst.
Or maybe you added an extra zero to a budget line item. But today, we are talking about a fat finger error that makes those mistakes look like...
Well, like absolutely nothing.
This is a different league of error. We are talking about a clerical error so massive, so financially astronomical, that for a few minutes, it theoretically created more billionaires in South Korea than exist in the rest of the world combined.
It is the kind of story that honestly sounds like fiction until you see the charts. It's a story about digital infrastructure, human error, and what happens when a simple keystroke collides with one of the most violent market crashes in history.
So let's set the scene properly. The date is February 6, 2026. So just yesterday, essentially. We're looking at Bithumb, one of the absolute giants of the South Korean crypto exchange market.
A huge player.
And everything centers around a promotional event that was supposed to be fun, harmless, and frankly, a little bit boring. It was called the Random Box event.
Right. And for context, these random box events are their standard operating procedure for exchanges. It's all about gamification. You want users to log in, engage with the app, maybe trade a little.
And you give them a little prize.
You give them a digital box to open, and inside there's a small prize. It's the digital equivalent of a scratch-off ticket where you win $2.
Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack exactly how that $2 scratch-off ticket turned into a winning lottery ticket for basically everyone involved.
Right.
We're going to look at the mechanics of the 196 billion won typo. We need to analyze the specific domino liquidation prevention systems that kicked in, which is a mouthful, but we'll break it down. And most importantly, we have to place this glitch in its proper context, because this didn't happen on a quiet sunny day. It happened during a hurricane.
That is the absolute critical piece of the puzzle. If this happens when Bitcoin is flat and boring, it's a funny anecdote. But this happened when the global markets were in an absolute freefall. It was a stress test of the highest order.
Okay, so let's start with the error itself. Segment 1, the multi-billion won typo. Walk us through the mechanics. Bithumb is running this event. What was the intention? What was supposed to happen?
The intention was incredibly modest. Bithumb just wanted to distribute small cash rewards to the winners. The sources we have say the planned rewards were strictly between 20,000 and 50,000 Korean won.
Okay, so let's do the mental conversion for everyone listening globally.
Yeah.
50,000 won.
Fat.
That's roughly, what, 35, maybe 40 US dollars, depending on the rate that day.
Exactly. It's lunch money. It's enough to buy a nice dinner in Seoul, maybe. It's a token thank you for using the platform. It is not life-changing money.
Right, not at all.
Yeah.
So the employee in charge of this, let's just call them the unlucky intern for the sake of the story, goes into the back-end system to set up the distribution. What specifically went wrong?
It appears to be a classic category error, a unit conversion mistake. In these database systems, you'll usually have a field for the amount and then a separate field for the asset or unit.
Okay.
The staff member reportedly entered the intended numerical value correctly, so, the number itself, but they swapped the unit. Instead of selecting Korean won as the payout currency, they selected Bitcoin.
I want to sit with that for a second. They didn't send 50,000 Satoshis, which is a tiny fraction of a Bitcoin. They didn't send 0.005 Bitcoin. They sent the number for the one amount as full Bitcoin.
That's what all the reports indicate. Users who were supposed to get a small cash prize opened their apps and found they had received at least 2,000 Bitcoin.
Per person.
Each.
That is, the math on that is just staggering. Let's break down the value, because the wow factor here is just completely off the charts. We have to look at the price of Bitcoin at that exact moment in Korea.
Right. And you have to remember, we're in the middle of a crash, but the price is still high relative to, historical norms. At the time of the error, Bitcoin was trading near 98 million won per coin on the Korean market.
Okay, so calculators out. 2,000 coins times 98 million won.
You're looking at a total value of roughly 196 billion won
per person.
per person. In US dollar terms, that's well over $130 million instantly, dropped right into a user's wallet.
196 billion won. Imagine you're just sitting on your couch, you open your phone to check your crypto, maybe expecting to see you lost a little money because the market's down, and instead, you see a balance that looks like the GDP of a small island nation.
It creates an immediate psychological shock. It's a reality bends moment. And this is where the story shifts from a technical error to a behavioral one. Because you have to ask yourself, if you open your app and you see $100 million that shouldn't be there, what's your first instinct?
Well, I'd love to say my instinct is to be a good citizen and, call customer support.
Yeah.
But if I'm being honest, my heart rate spikes to 200, and I'm wondering if I can withdraw it before anyone notices.
And that is exactly what happened. The users didn't just stare at the screen. They acted.
They acted fast.
They acted fast. They tried to secure the bag, as the saying goes. They immediately started selling the mistakenly credited coins.
Which leads us right into the chaos of segment 2, because you can't just withdraw 2,000 Bitcoin to your bank account instantly. You have to sell it on the exchange first to get the cash.
Correct. You have to dump it into the order book. And markets, even sophisticated crypto markets, they just function on supply and demand. The order book is just a list of people willing to buy at certain prices.
And suddenly you have multiple people trying to sell thousands of Bitcoin.
Exactly. They're all dumping thousands of Bitcoin onto the sell side of that book at the same time.
And there simply aren't enough buyers sitting there to absorb billions of dollars of sell orders in a split second.
No chance. Not even close. It's an artificial flood of supply. These are coins that shouldn't exist, or at least shouldn't be in those users' hands. But the matching engine, the code that runs the exchange, it doesn't know it's a mistake.
It just sees an order.
It just sees a valid sell order. So it executes. It sells to the highest bidder, then the next highest, and the next, and on down the book.
Which drives the price down.
Yeah.
Vertically.
Exactly. It caused a severe price dislocation. The reports show that the price of Bitcoin on Bithumb crashed completely independently of the global market. It actually fell more than 10% below the broader market levels during the incident.
That's massive.
Yeah.
In the world of high-frequency trading and arbitrage, a 1% difference between exchanges is considered huge.
It's a flashing red light.
A 10% gap. That is a universe. That is a signal that something is fundamentally deeply broken.
And usually arbitrage bots, automated trading scripts, they would jump in, they'd see Bitcoin is cheap on Bithumb and expensive somewhere else, and they'd buy on Bithumb to close that gap. But this happened so fast and the volume was so abnormal that the market it essentially broke.
Bithumb's internal systems must have been just screaming.
Oh, absolutely. They recognized what they called abnormal transactions through their internal control systems.
I just love that corporate phrasing. Abnormal transactions. It sounds so polite for, we just accidentally made all our users billionaires.
It is the understatement of the century. But they had to act immediately. They promptly restricted transactions for the relevant accounts, so they essentially froze the ability for those specific users to trade or withdraw anything.
Stop bleeding.
Had to stop the bleeding before the cash actually left the building.
And they issued a statement, right? They apologized for the confusion and inconvenience.
Which is, again, putting it very mildly. But the key thing they emphasized, and this is really important for you to understand, is that they stated very clearly this was an operational mistake.
Right.
It was not a hack. It was not an external security breach.
Why is that distinction so vital to the user? I mean, chaos is chaos.
It matters for solvency and trust. If it's a hack, the funds are gone, stolen by a third party, vanished. If it's an operational error, the assets are technically still inside the exchange's walled garden. They can, in theory, roll back the ledger.
Because they control the database.
They can reverse the trades because they control their own internal database.
Yeah. So it's the difference between someone robbing the bank and the bank teller accidentally handing you the contents of the entire vault. The money is still physically there, it's just in the wrong hands for me.
Precisely. But before we get to how they fixed it, we have to zoom out. Because we cannot understand the panic of this moment without looking at the broader picture. Segment 3, the broader storm.
Right. This glitch did not happen in a vacuum. If this happened today, maybe it's just a funny headline, but February 5th and 6th, 2026, those were dark, dark days for the market.
They were brutal. While the Bithumb team was sweating over this typo, the global price of Bitcoin was experiencing one of its most dramatic sell-offs in history.
So let's look at the data. What was happening to the price around the world at that time?
It was plunging. Bitcoin plummeted down to $60,000. Now, I know some people listening might hear $60,000 and think, that still sounds pretty high. But you have to look at where it came from.
Of course.
In October 2025, just a few months prior, Bitcoin had hit an all-time high of over $126,000.
So we are talking about a massive destruction of value, a 50% haircut from the peak.
Exactly. And the sources describe this specifically as the largest raw dollar drawdown ever recorded.
Okay, let's unpack that term raw dollar drawdown, because percentages can be deceptive.
Right. If Bitcoin drops 80% when it's only worth $100, you lose $80. If it dropped 50% when it's worth $126,000, you are wiping out over $60,000 of value per coin. The total amount of wealth that just vaporized from the global economy in this move was larger than any crash before it.
The sources even compare this to the FTX collapse back in 2022.
They do, and they note that the selling pressure here actually surpassed what we saw during the FTX collapse, and that was a moment of, existential crisis for the industry, fraud, bankruptcy, jail time, and yet, strictly in terms of market mechanics and selling volume, this crash was more violent.
Why? What was driving it? Was it just bad news, or was there something structural?
It's almost always leverage. The report highlights that over $1.1 billion in derivatives positions were liquidated.
Okay, for anyone listening who isn't a day trader, let's quickly explain the mechanics of a liquidation cascade, because that term comes up so much.
Sure, think of it like this. You borrow money to bet that the price of Bitcoin will go up. That's using leverage. If you bet wrong and the price goes down instead, the exchange eventually says, hey, you don't have enough collateral to cover this loss anymore.
So they sell for you.
So they automatically, forcibly sell your Bitcoin to pay back the loan.
And when they force sell your Bitcoin, that action itself drives the price down further.
Which then triggers someone else's liquidation point. So now they get forced to sell, the price goes down more, the next person gets liquidated. It's a domino effect.
A domino effect. Hold that thought, because that is the perfect segue back to Bithumb.
Exactly, because when the global price broke that key support level at $70,000, it accelerated straight down to $60,000. That is the environment in which Bithumb accidentally credited these users. The market was already terrified, liquidity was already thin because all the buyers had been wiped out, and then suddenly, bam, thousands of fake Bitcoin hit their order book.
It really is the perfect storm. You have a fatigued market, record-breaking selling pressure, and then this huge internal disaster.
So let's talk about the systems that saved them. Segment 4, systems under pressure.
This is, for me, the most fascinating technical part of the story. Bithumb used a very specific phrase to describe how they handled this. They called it the Domino Liquidation Prevention System.
It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. What exactly is this system?
Well, we don't have the proprietary blueprints, obviously, but based on industry standards, we can infer what it means. In high-frequency trading, you need automated circuit breakers. You need a referee that is much faster than any human.
So, kind of like on the stock market. When the Dow drops too fast, trading just halts for a bit. A similar concept, yeah, but it's internal to the exchange's liquidation engine. It usually works by comparing the mark price, so the price on Bithumb, to the index price, which is the average global price from multiple sources.
And if they get too far apart?
If the spread between them gets too wide, the system pulls the emergency brake.
Because if Bithumb is trading 10% lower than the rest of the world, that price isn't real.
It's not a real organic market price.
Okay.
Exactly. And here's why that is so critical. Many other users on Bithumb also have leverage positions. They have loans. If the price on Bithumb suddenly crashes 10% because of a typo, all those innocent users would get liquidated.
They'd lose everything unfairly.
They'd lose their positions unfairly. So the Domino Liquidation Prevention System detects that the price movement is abnormal and it stops the forced selling.
So it pauses the liquidations.
Right. It pauses the automatic liquidations. The source explicitly says this system prevented more severe chain liquidations tied to that abnormal price.
And here's the irony I want to highlight. This system was likely built and stress-tested to handle a market crash, like the global drop to $60,000. But on this specific day, its biggest test didn't come from the global market at all. It came from an internal clerical error.
It was protecting the exchange from itself. It was a guardrail designed for external storms that ended up saving them from an internal fire.
Now, despite all this chaos, the typo, the selling, the crash Bithumb was very, very firm on one point regarding their customers.
Yes. They stated, and I'm quoting here, "It is understood that this incident did not result in any loss or damage to customer assets."
Which is a bold claim when you think about the sheer panic that must have occurred.
It is, but think about what it implies. If a user sold that accidental Bitcoin and somehow managed to withdraw actual cash in those few minutes, that money is gone. If Bithumb says no customer assets were lost, it means Bithumb the corporation likely absorbed any leakage that occurred.
They ate the loss themselves to keep all the user funds whole.
Exactly. They effectively rolled back the database for the error, and any cash that might have leaked out came from the company's own treasury, not from other users' deposits.
It just brings up such a complex picture of what an asset really is in this digital space. You have the global price, you have the Bithumb price, you have the accidental Bitcoin, all of it just swirling around in this one database.
It really peels back the curtain on how centralized exchanges work. We often think of Bitcoin as this immutable thing on the blockchain, but within an exchange, it's just entries in a SQL database. It's a number in a column, and if someone types the wrong unit into that column, reality bends.
Reality bends. I like that. It feels like we stepped into a different dimension for a few minutes there.
We really did. And you have to give credit to the automated systems. Without that domino prevention, this could have spiraled into total insolvency for the exchange. If that price had crashed to zero on Bithumb and triggered every single liquidation, the hole in their balance sheet could have been insurmountable.
It's a testament to the importance of those boring back-end fail-safes. Everyone wants to talk about the shiny user interface or the new token listings, but it's the prevention systems that actually keep the lights on.
Absolutely. In a high-speed financial system, humans are the slow link and humans are the error-prone link. You need the machine to catch the human when they inevitably trip.
Before we wrap up, I do want to touch on the current status. The report mentions that at the time of writing, Bitcoin had recovered a bit to trade above $69,000. So the world didn't end.
No, the world didn't end. Volatility is the price of admission in this market. We saw a 50% drop, we saw a multi-billion-dollar fat finger, and yet blocks continue to be produced. The network just keeps ticking.
It's resilient, if nothing else.
It is, but it's also a very stark reminder of fragility.
Let's recap this perfect storm for our listeners.
Yeah.
We had a market that was already on edge, experiencing a historic sell-off from $126,000 all the way down to $60,000. We had massive leverage being flushed out of the system, over $1 billion wiped out. And right in the eye of that hurricane, a Bithumb employee accidentally keys in Bitcoin instead of one.
Turning a $30 prize into a $130 million windfall for thousands of users.
Resulting in panic selling, a localized flash crash on the exchange, and a frantic test of their automated defense systems. It's a case study that will be taught in risk management courses for years.
It really will. The 196 billion one typo. It has a ring to it.
It does. And I think the key takeaway here is about the layers of trust we all operate on. We trust the code of the blockchain, sure. But when we use these platforms, we're also trusting the internal controls, the UI designers, and the tired employee entering data on a Friday afternoon.
It's a fragile chain.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the guardrails, those abnormal transaction detectors, are the only thing standing between a bad day and a total collapse.
So here is the thought I want to leave you with today. We talked about how users were credited with Bitcoin that didn't really exist. It was just a number on a screen. But for a few minutes, they could trade it. They could move the market with it.
It felt real.
Exactly. So if an exchange can accidentally create billions of dollars of buying power with a simple manual entry error, what does that tell us about the idea of scarcity inside these centralized databases? When you see a number on your screen, is it an asset or is it just a promise?
That's the uncomfortable question. Until you hold the private keys or until you successfully withdraw to the chain, it's just a database entry. And as we saw today, databases can have typos.
A sobering thought to check your balances with.
That's it for this deep dive into the Bithumb blunder of 2026. Thanks for listening, and double-check your spreadsheets.
And maybe avoid the reply all button today.
Good advice. See you next time.